Hey everyone, Heather Ash here, and I'm so happy to introduce to you Kriste Peoples, who I met through Sounds True many, many years ago. And um, I just remember when we met, Kriste, that I was just like, I love you, was my feeling, like, whoa!
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and so I'm just feel so grateful for you coming on and sharing from your heart and tell everybody. I always just love you to introduce yourself rather than me introduce you, except for that, you are fabulous. To give people a flavor of who you are, and then whatever wants to come through today. And I'll be in the background, of course, listening and answering questions. So if folks have anything that you want to share, I'm watching the chat. Okay.
Fantastic. Oh, I'm so thrilled to be here, Heather Ash. Thank you so very much for the invitation. And I have to just say to the viewers, wow, isn't Heather Ash just amazing? When we met, I was a producer at Sounds True, and I still am a producer and have had a great time working with Heather Ash and just learning from her and being in some of her workshops. I think the first time we formally met, she was guiding me over hot coals. And I was sort of freaking out in the background at one part of this session when she came to Sounds True to just give a demonstration of just some of her work. And she had people with pipes at I mean, it was amazing. I can't even tell you all the things, but you guys probably have a good idea of what Heather Ash does and what she's capable of in terms of bringing the magic and the fire. And so when she reached out to me, it was an immediate yes. If Heather asked me something, Heather Ash is like gonna get a yes from me. And so when she asked what I was interested in talking about, well, actually, I asked her, what should I talk about? And she said it was completely open. I said, I want to talk about fear. And this was a while back when we were first having this conversation. And now that we are right in the throes of even more cultural upheaval and separation and divisiveness, I still I still feel like I want to talk about fear. Now, here's why it's so important to me. Well, let me back up and tell you a little bit more about who I am before I launch into this big conversation about fear. So, I'm a producer at Sounds True. I am also a mindfulness meditation teacher. I just started teaching classes on how to really get present and use some of the practices of mindfulness and meditation to really meet the challenges and the moments of our lives. In the work that I do, I see a lot of people who are using spirituality and spiritual practice as a bypass from getting into the real, what I call the meat and the heat of the issues. However, my approach with mindfulness and spirituality is that it needs to be a practice that brings you closer to the truth of who you are. And the truth of who you are, as far as I'm concerned, is that you are not separate from me, that we are interconnected in our being. And so when we have resources, when we have understanding that we really are one, and when we can sit still long enough to really drop our literal and figurative masks, we get to really touch in to that truth. And it becomes more and more not only challenging, but also more and more critical that we're able to do this, particularly in these times. So, mindfulness meditation teacher, new age spirituality, media producer, interviewer, and host. I am also a huge advocate of outdoor engagement. And so I'm often giving talks and presentations on equity in the outdoors because for a long time, and I'm talking decades, if not centuries, for people of color, there hasn't always been a feeling of belonging and welcome in the outdoors. Now, I live and work primarily in Colorado. I mean, aside from being online, which crosses all boundaries and borders, more or less. Um, but I am a trail runner. I'm a women's trail running coach. I write about trail running. I talk about it. If you have seen any of my social media, you know I'm all about the outdoors. And yet, wherever I go, that there also go my challenges, my concerns, my fears, my hopes, so everything is related. And so when I go out to the mountains and engage in activity, something that comes up huge for me is that, you know what, some people have been traumatized on these lands. Some of these lands that I am recreating on are the burial grounds for people who have been displaced and just wiped off the face of the earth. There is blood on the mountain, literally. And so bringing our awareness to that, understanding some of the tragedy and trauma that has taken place for us to be able to live the lives that we live is huge. Being in nature also means a reclamation of our ability to go where we want to be free, and to really connect with a space and a spirit that has been sort of driven out of us over time. So people say, well, anybody can go outside. Why don't people feel welcome? What are you talking about? Are you sure you're not just belly aching? The truth of it is, a lot of bad things have happened to people. There have been and continue to be abductions and disappearances and microaggressions and hostility toward people who were not in the dominant culture. And so it's very important for us to understand that anytime, for me personally, anytime I go out into nature, it is a huge act of reclamation, empowerment, and sheer will to forge a bond with the land that not only carries the stories of my ancestors and all of our ancestors, but also teaches me how to be grounded, how to slow down, how to address any and everything that is coming up in my life. So I get to bring that back from the mountain and share that and embody that as best as I'm able in my daily life. And so I could say a whole lot about that kind of engagement, and I do in other places. But here, I really want to talk about fear. Now, here's why. So, I also say I'm a writer and I'm a speaker and an outdoor advocate and trail running coach and producer, all that stuff. Here's why I want to talk about fear, because I see a lot of teachers, a lot of venerated and accomplished instructors and guides who would rather bypass the rough road of coming to terms with our challenges than actually sitting in it, getting uncomfortable, and getting their hands dirty, and actually messing up sometimes and trying to address what we're really up against right now. And so for a lot of people, that's fear of not wanting to mess up, not wanting to get it wrong, not wanting to get too deeply immersed in the issues, And so for some people, it's also fear of maybe falling off of a pedestal that people have placed them on. But today, these days, in our current climate, we need everybody on board, afraid or not. You know that saying about feel the fear and do it anyway? this might be that, this might definitely be that time. And I want to say too that when people tell me, "Oh, you got to be fearless," and in our culture, this whole idea, in the American culture anyway, this whole idea that we got to be fearless and we can do it and climb that hill and be bold or be big or go home. Well, I call bullshit on that, right? Because we can't live and breathe in this culture without experiencing some measure of fear. And it's a false statement to kind of present oneself as though, we've fully arrived when we've actually had our own fair amount of struggle, upheaval, discontent in getting to wherever it is that we've arrived to. So fear can be really instructive. Fear can also bond us in a way because we're willing to say in our sense of fear is that, hey, I don't know what's behind that wall. I don't know how you're going to perceive me if I tell you that I don't have an answer. I don't know whether or not I'm going to be abandoned if I show up enraged or despairing. Because again, the culture in many ways has given us a very narrow road or range of expression or owning and honoring our emotions. I call bullshit on that too. Because we need to be able to have full range of our emotions and our feelings and our stories. My goodness, we have to be able to own and honor our stories, or else we get left out of the narrative. And we kind of fall into the rut of appearing as though we're okay when we're not. We fall into the system of saying, I'm accomplished, I've arrived, I don't feel the fear, I'm big and bold and dynamic and doing all the things, when actually it was hard for me to get out of bed this morning. So we need to just really check ourselves, collectively speaking. And in my own experience, I was just sharing with Heather Ash this morning. I'm in the studio this week with a teacher, and he asked, we were talking just as we gotten together. I said, how are you doing? And if that isn't the question of the moment, how are you doing? Oh, no. So he said, quite honestly, I'm devastated. I don't know what to say here. I don't know what to do because there's been another police shooting. Someone else has died. More blood has been shed. And the nation is really in a crazy place right now. And so beyond that, I'm okay, he said. And he was like, how are you? And he also said, I want to really say that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for your people. And so as I was sharing with Heather Ash, I got to show up and run this show all week. There is no way that I can mix it up with this man right now. On top of which, I don't really know how I'm feeling. And I shared that with Heather Ash as well. I don't know what's up. Because part of the reality right now is that, it's scary out there. It's scary in here. Sometimes people say to me, they might see me on social media and say, oh, I love your pictures and seeing what you're doing out there in the mountains, but be careful, it could be dangerous. And I certainly understand that concern for my safety and well-being. At the same time, it can be dangerous right here in my home, in my bed, while I'm asleep with my doors locked. Breonna Taylor was sleeping when her home was invaded and she was murdered. And so there have been other examples of that as well. And so wherever I'm showing up, or in whatever way I'm showing up, there is a possibility that that could be the last time I show up anywhere. And so really living with that reality creates a huge, not only burden, but also a very real sense of, in my world, responsibility to a moment, an accountability for my life and what I'm doing with it. You know, let me just marinate on that for a minute. We all know that one day it's going to be curtains. What are we doing in the meantime? You know, again, to fear. If we know that our time is limited, and we all know this, then we also know or have an awareness of some of the things that we might want to accomplish between now and then. And starting out or setting out on that path can feel daunting, especially in the face of so many challenges and inner conflicts and pressures that we're facing, and let alone the stuff that we haven't faced, you know? And so you can't tell me that you're not going to navigate that space without a measure of fear. And so really being able to embrace that truth and some of the other truths that I've shared that, are inconvenient truths, well, the only way through is really through. And I don't want anybody on this conversation to rest in the idea that you have to always be bold and badass and doing it alone and not showing any vulnerability and all that, because the truth is we don't do anything alone. I don't care what you're telling yourself. You get in your car and you drive somewhere and you go do some things. There are 100 people, thousands of people, there are generations of people who have made that possible. Your parents, who brought you into the world, independent of whatever your relationship is, you wouldn't be there without them. You wouldn't have the car if you didn't have the money to pay for it, wherever that money came from. That's part of what got you to that point. The people who made the car, the people who made the roads, the people who made the traffic signals. When we really stop to think about the countless unseen hands that have literally paved the way and bushwhacked for us to just be able to show up. We're not doing it alone. You don't just arrive fully formed. Well, actually, maybe we do, and maybe we unlearn a lot of that through cultural conditioning. But the thing is that even with that, we don't do anything alone. It's really important to honor that, especially when we're feeling separate, isolated, alienated, and fearful. We have support. And so one thing I teach in my mindfulness and meditation classes is that if you're really feeling up against it and can't even take a breath, can't really feel yourself, one of the things that you can do is just really sit in the moment and let your body feel the support that you have from the surface you're sitting on. If there's nothing else you've got support from there. The fact that you're breathing is huge, right? Where are we without the breath? Even if it's a shallow, anxious breath, attuning to that and giving ourselves permission to really take a deep inhale, a cleansing breath. Why don't we do that all together right now, please? How about we do that? It's just arrive. I know this is everywhere. I know this is all over the place, but Heather Ash said I could. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm just giving you everything as it comes up. As you can tell, this is unrehearsed. This is not scripted. This is real. So get comfortable. All right. So I want you to just take a moment to allow your body to just really settle and get comfortable and just relax. Soften your face a little bit. Let your jaw be loose. And feel your spine erect but supple. Let's just take a breath from the belly, from the soles of our feet, from the bottom ends of our toes, just pulling up fresh earth energy. Feeling the bowl of our bellies and allowing it to fill the lungs on the way up. Just holding it there at the top for a moment, feeling ourselves full and replenished. And a deep exhale here. Just arriving together with the breath. One more deep breath here, pulling in from the center of the earth, cleansing, replenishing, filling us, filling that bowl of our belly. And then letting it fill the lungs. Holding at the top for a moment. And exhaling here. Just letting go of a little measure of the stress and arriving. Oh, look at that. I am in the light. Okay. So, all right, just arriving together. That felt good. So, thinking about our goals, our presence, and our capacity to really connect with each other really requires us to traverse some tricky expanses. And so if I'm saying anything here that is useful today, I want that to be that it's up to us to really embrace whatever it is that our fear looks like, to really touch into that numbness and overwhelm, the sense of despair and alienation, whatever those discomforts are or those challenges are, to really sit with those, not necessarily to try and fix or heal or displace or explain them away, but to acknowledge what's happening with us and to really feel the weight of what we're holding, to know that we're not alone, and to know that independent of where you are on your journey, where you are relative to your goals or achieving your dreams, we're right where we need to be. And we have work to do. And this doesn't mean that it has to be big, earth-shattering work. A great part of that work, again, with whatever our practice is to really understand who we are, the truth of who we are. I'm not just saying memorizing your social security number and your address and maybe, paying the toll of somebody behind you one day. I'm talking about really getting in to who we are and to who we came here to be. Going in and excavating the junk, digging through those old stories, really looking at what is true, looking for what is true, what is relevant, what is keeping me separated from you, what is keeping you separate from me. In a moment when the person I was with this morning in the studio, there was a moment when he said, "Oh, I'm really sorry for your people, for what's happening to your people." And the first thing that came up was, well, why aren't we your people too? And then I put that on the shelf and I came back to it later in the day. And I thought, well, let me ask that question of myself. Am I considering him as my people too? Am I considering you all as my people? Now, it's easy for me to say, well, yes. Of course I do. I just said we're all connected. And yet, this is the moment. This is the meat and the heat of our spiritual practice. And even if you're not spiritual or religious or whatever, this is the work of personal development and growth. We can leave it right there. That's the work of really eliminating our biases, our walls, our blocks. And man, the challenge, it's hard, y'all. It's hard. And I was just sharing recently that, I was having a challenging moment and I thought I had to really stand in that for a moment and say, you know what? What is the story here? What am I making up about this particular situation? Because it was a confrontational situation with someone who was white and who was a man and who I felt was being aggressive toward me. And I paused and I said, is it possible for me to consider that this is not personal? And this was a retail situation. I was asking the person about which line I needed to be on in order to make a purchase. And I had to be in that store to make that purchase, otherwise I would have left. And so I said, okay, how can I be in this store in full integrity? And I said, so I went through the practice, let me think about this and let me consider that maybe this person is doing the best he can. Can I make room for that? And so I just started breathing and just to quietly to myself, hand on my heart. Nobody knew what I was doing. Can I make room for this? How am I within myself? I'm like, okay, I can make room. I can allow that maybe he's feeling challenged and up against it. Breathing. Can I also allow that this person might be feeling overwhelmed right now? Okay, checking in with myself. All right. And sure enough, I did this practice and I just kept doing it again and again. And what I came away with was, by the time I got to the front of the line, he was in an entirely different countenance and mood. And it really brought me to the power of loving kindness for ourselves first, for ourselves first, right? And then extending that out to other people, particularly people who are tormentors or oppressors or acting outside of their own truth. Because if they were acting in their truth, they wouldn't be oppressors. That's another conversation. Heather Ash will have to bring me back for that. But, you know, it made me think of the countless freedom fighters, abolitionists, warriors, and people who actually prayed for the tormentors and captors, because one of the truths that is inconvenient is that everybody needs healing. Those people are in need of healing too. And so when you circle back around to the shootings, the killings, the murders, it's really complicated. It is extraordinarily complicated because there is rage, there is outrage, there is anger, there is deep-seated trauma and hostility, and there is also the need for us to cultivate love for ourselves, self-love, because we can't always be in rage mode. And particularly in communities of color, where health is often compromised because of systemic racism that puts us in living conditions, work conditions, health conditions that are not optimal. So it's important for us, for our own self-care, to be well, to be whole, so that we can go out and face the challenges, hold the rage, and hold the love, and be effective rather than reactionary, reacting in fear, reacting out of old programming, so that we can be proactive and so that we can really make change and find, create, experience some level of justice. If I dare not, if I dare say freedom. So fear is a part of that. And I realize, even as I have talked about fear, I've talked about probably 100 other things as well. But this is the interrelated nature of who we are, right? And it's complicated, and it is inconvenient, and it is critical that we bring our awareness to these complexities. You know, how are we showing up? This is beyond what you want your press to be or how you want to be seen. This is like really an invitation, a mandate to look inside ourselves and see what it is we're carrying, what stories are we holding on to, and what truths do we want to live into. For me personally, one of my truths that I want to live into is the truth of our interconnectedness. I want to be able to meet you on the street and say, hey, yeah, you're my sister, you're my brother, and mean it, as opposed to what the culture has cemented into so many of us. It's them over there versus us, or it's me against the world, or it's nobody cares and I'm alone. So, you know, rather than continuing to circle the spiritual drain, I would love to interface with you, answer any questions that might be coming up, or any considerations that you guys have arrived at in the midst of my bah. Happy to talk about that, and also happy to continue on.
Mm. Oh my gosh. I have tears in my eyes. I've just been sitting here just feeling so deeply what you're sharing. About the places we separate ourselves without realizing it, the places that we don't want to look, and just the power of what you're saying about the inconvenient truths. Can we face and hold both?
Mm-hmm.
Hard conversations to have, that there's hard things happening, and
Yeah.
it's complicated. I That's what I've been saying over and over again. It's like, okay, loves, it's complicated and we can't look away.
Right.
We can't look away.
Yeah.
Well, we can, but we don't want to.
Right. We dare not. We dare not. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm. And I think that's it. I'll just share some of the comments.
Okay. Because I'm not looking, I can't see the comments, so I don't know. Yeah.
So
Okay.
I love your voice, which I love your voice too. That's from Tracy. That gave me a light bulb moment. So we were doing the presencing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not gonna read my own comments. I'm loving this live from Angel. Yeah. And when you were sharing the story actually with me about the person that you're at work with, and that you need to be professional, you need to stay focused, and to have that conversation, how are you? You can't go there, and how
Right.
tender that is, and also the response of I'm sorry for your people, and I'm like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
us. I'm sorry for us. Like, ouch. Like,
Yeah.
it's both though. That's what's so interesting about this conversation, right? Because it's true. My white skin is not. I'm not worried when I get in a car that I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
be pulled over and shot.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. So
Mm-hmm.
is that difference because of the color of our skin? And yet, the murders that are happening are human beings. So it's, how do we hold both?
Right. And if we're not able to really see each other as neighbors or as human beings at an equal footing, then it's really hard to achieve that justice that we're seeking or that community that we're talking about. And so I had to ask myself too, when he said, "Oh, your people," my inner reaction was like, why aren't we your people too? But my feeling was, do I consider this man my people as well? Do I consider everybody, my relation? That saying, like, all my, and the prayers that end with, and all my relations, all the sentient beings. Can I really take that in? Because it's one thing to just be like, I've got my family, I've got my friends, I've got my colleagues, but that person over there, this group over there that is, you know, constantly kind of, prey or scapegoated or whatever, are they also my people? I don't know many people who are like them. Like, I don't know where to start. So it's like, it's tricky. It seems overwhelming, at times, to like make those inroads, but we have to really do our own personal work. I think everything comes back to our personal work of stripping away the layers and masks, Heather Ash. I mean, you know,
Yeah, I think that's so true. And that part of the masks, I mean, there's so many levels of the masks, and the
right.
willingness to look at all of them. Like you said, like it was so poignant when you were talking about running, and that awareness of running on stolen land, that there's been bloodshed, that there's been so much damage that's not talked about, that's not recognized often. And how do
Mhm.
we hold the beauty? That's what I'm always asking myself, like, how do we hold the beauty and the blessings that we have now with
Mhm.
the history, with the understanding of the history, and not
Mhm.
hate either.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that for me, that really deepens the impact and importance of my presence in the outdoors because I know that it hasn't been an easy journey. I mean, after slavery, after emancipation, not long after that, a lot of Black people moved to the North for better opportunity. Nobody wanted to be, a lot fewer people wanted to be on the fields and figure, okay, this is opportunity, getting off the fields and into the office spaces, and not looking back. I mean, who could blame anyone for wanting to move for opportunity, you know? And so since then there's been like there has been a stigma, like, why do you want to go out there on the land? It's dangerous out there. And then media also shows a certain type of person who gets to play in the outdoors, and so that person is um well, well funded. That person is white. That's some like chiseled Nordic looking dude bro, shushing down the mountain and all that stuff. And so, when people come up who don't look like that or don't fit that marketing mold, it's a huge statement to people who are differently abled, to people who are from different marginalized experiences, LGBT, trans communities included. And so it's not just about, oh, I'm outside taking a hike. This is, I'm aware of what happened on these lands. That makes me that much more of a better, that makes me a much better steward of the land. That makes me really conscious of my connection or my reclamation of my ability to be on the land. And it also sends a message to other people who look like me, or people in marginalized communities, or people who are underrepresented out there, that, hey, we can do it too. We have a right to engage in our spaces. And so, public lands, it's not just a phrase, it's like taxpayer money that has purchased these lands, and we're taxpayers, and so it belongs to me. And so, the first time it really landed, I thought, oh, wow, I own this land too. you
Yes.
know, in as much as you own the land or the next person owns the land, but really thinking about things in this way can start to really open up our experience or open up that aperture, and not only give us more access, but also more understanding of what's really going on here when we get outdoors, or even when we are sharing enclosed spaces with other people. you know um I deeply do want to feel a sense of connection to everyone I meet. I want people to know that, I'm wonderful. I'm sure you're wonderful too. I want to know how wonderful you are. But there's so many divides and bridges and, you know, canyons to cross to meet that.
Yeah. And you're a bridge. The work that you're doing, just putting your body on the land and sharing about your running and your adventures, you're bridging both your heart to the land as a healing for the land and what's there and what's been there. And then bridging to other people, like you said, that look like you or that are marginalized or that are different, that might not go, I don't, oh, wait, Christy's doing it. Maybe I can go run or walk or hike or be out in nature. And it's just so vital. No, I know for me, we've got two great questions, but for me, when I was 19, um, my life got changed because one of the women that I lived with said, I'm going camping this weekend. And I was like, by yourself? Like, it never occurred to me that as a woman, I could go out by myself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
zero
Mm-hmm.
and I was just like everything got blown open at that moment. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
so grateful that happened so young
Right.
because it's
Right.
okay to be on the road and go, live out. And people always ask me that question, aren't you afraid? I'm like, no,
Right. Aren't you afraid? And
no.
the thing, yeah. And you know what? If you were afraid, that's okay too.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you can do it, and you can do it. And one of the things that comes up for me is like when you're sharing that experience about, when you were 19. Oh my goodness, I didn't even realize I was afraid, or I had an idea that I couldn't do it.
Yes.
Like how much more of that is internalized, that keeps us behind our walls. What have we internalized? Because that requires us to really go in and mine our interior landscape, you know
Yes.
if we want to really move forward and connect. Mm.
Yeah. So true. And I'm just thinking too of the picture of you. I don't remember what magazine it was, but there's a picture of you and a white man on a running magazine. And I'm just like,
Hmm.
yes, like it's so powerful because it's that you can do it. It doesn't have to be the stereotype. Like
Right.
breaking the stereotypes. So just
Yeah. And before, I know you said there are two questions, I wanted to say this one thing too about fear and our goals. Because speaking of bridges and big gaps from getting to where we are to these goals and dreams and stuff, I think it's so important for us to just take the first step without even knowing what the next step is. We don't have to figure it all out and dial everything out to the end and know how we're going to impact the world and billions of people. Just changing ourselves, just interrupting our story and our cycle and our patterns to do one new thing outside of our comfort zone, or to just lean up against the comfort zone until it gives. So that way, you know,
here.
yeah, I'm just, this is the, you know what? Because maybe that's the most I can do right now because life is overwhelming out there and in here. It's crazy pants. But if I can lean into it a little bit and just keep the pressure on gently, even while I have a little fear. Hey, it's okay if I go an inch further. It's okay if I do a little bit more. That is significant too. And I don't want to overlook that. We cannot miss that because we are all at, our capacity is and our attention is compromised right now and we're in a mess. But the little steps are really significant.
Yeah. And that's such a huge point, Christy. And that I think sometimes people hold themselves back because they're like, if I'm going to make a change, I have to do this huge thing. It's like, no, just a little thing for yourself,
Yeah.
a little tiny thing for someone else, a little, like, that's how change happens, especially now, because we have to
Right.
understand there's so much psychic, emotional,
Mm-hmm.
energetic whirlwinding happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so baby steps, baby steps. Okay, let me share this. I'm like, we're just gonna keep going. So I'm gonna stop. Teresa, are you tired of hearing I'm sorry because of the color of your skin? And what's something someone that doesn't feel equal say?
What's someone that doesn't feel equal?
Yeah.
Okay.
That means I think the main thing is, are you tired of hearing I'm sorry because of the color of your skin? So let's start there. And maybe
You
look at
know,
like what would be a, a better response, or like how do we interact?
mm-hmm.
Jing.
Well, I want to say that. I don't even know. I don't know Teresa, right? Teresa, I don't even know if tired is a word because again, I was sharing Heather Ash and I was sharing like I don't know how I'm doing right now. It's so moment to moment, right? There's being tired, there's fatigue, there's exhaustion, there's despair, there's numbness, So sometimes I just can't, I'm at capacity, I just can't feel. And so I have to consider the source, right? Because someone who is genuine of heart and says, I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do. How can I help? That's huge. That's important. My door is always open for that, and I am grateful for that consideration. But someone who says, sorry for your people, wouldn't want to be you, and there is the energy of it, wouldn't want to be you, or wow, you really are under the gun, or when there is the energy of dismissal and superiority and negation, then that's another wound right there, and that can be a sort of violence, right? And so it really depends on the person, and it depends on what day I'm showing up and how I'm receiving it, because who knows what kind of gauntlet I've had to walk just to get to where I'm supposed to be going. And so what can a person do? I think i think whatever you can do to extend, to close the distance, to ask, do just what you did, ask questions, lean into those areas of discomfort, because what I have found is that there are so many good-hearted, willing people who really clam up because they don't want to get it wrong, they don't want to say the wrong thing. And to that I say, we definitely need you and your hands on deck. We need you to be willing to, not have all the answers, for Pete's sake. That's Nobody has answers. Let that go, needing to have the answers. Come forward in humility and integrity and a willingness to listen and learn. Because people who come in knowing all the answers don't know the experience of the people that they're trying to impose these answers on. And then that becomes a huge burden to me, because then I have to do the emotional lift to not only keep you comfortable, but then also to dig out from under this additional layer of stress that has been put on me by somebody who's coming in telling me what to do yet again in my pain and despair. No. So, yeah, thank you for that question.
It's so good. The second question is, a lot of people, non black, say they are tired of hearing Black Lives Matter. How do I answer that? So sad. So true.
Yeah.
Painful.
Yeah. Right.
Hmm.
Well, that's the thing. I I'm tired of it too. You know why? Because Black lives should matter. Why do we have to keep saying it? Black lives should matter.
Period.
Until they do, expect to keep hearing it. I mean, and this is inconvenient for people who, um, and this is tiresome and inconvenient to people who aren't used to ongoing challenges and struggles and grievances and oppression and violence. People can't believe it, and they tap out because they're overwhelmed. But guess what? This is the daily experience of people who are in historically marginalized communities, particularly the Black community. And that's just it. So this isn't about um, you know, shutting down someone who is tired of hearing it. It's about really opening up some understanding around why is this person tired? Have you Have you really talked or listened to people who were saying this, or to people who are in the experience of pain and challenge? Or do you understand the historical background of what's happening right now? And why Black people are tired as well. We've been tired for centuries. So how long have you been at it? you know? Yeah.
Yes, that's a good mirror to hold up. And I think too that, I mean, just like you're saying, Christy, is that for me, what I do is I remind people this is a this is long term work. This is not going to be resolved by one more protest
Right.
or by whatever, us all singing kumbaya and it's all better. Like, it ain't gonna happen. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's been happening too long. And that reflection
Mm-hmm.
of, please understand the history. This is deep. Racism
Mm-hmm.
is so deep, embedded in everything we
Yeah.
structure, and to help people understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And to build
Mm-hmm.
resilience. I feel like as white people, we have to build resilience. You, as a Black woman, you've built resilience because you've had to. There's been no choice, really. But now people are like, come on, babies. Like, you got to build some resilience too.
Yeah.
It's time.
And right. And to not put the burden on other people to do that work for you. That's an important piece. And also, really, there's a lot that can be gained from talking with each other. White people talking with each other, starting to understand, well, what are your biases? What are your fears? What are your stories? Like, what do you think will happen if you talk to that racist relative, or you uncover some of your own racism or blind spots? Like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, what resources do you have to manage that, rather than shying away from it, leaning in, like, okay, this is what change is. The protests are important and incredibly powerful to really let people see, to like gauge the temperature of what's happening in the culture, right? But you put your protest sign down and you go home, and if you're tolerating a racist joke, or you're sweeping it under the rug, or turning a blind eye to it, a deaf ear to it, then you're complicit. So really looking at how in those unguarded conversations, because, you know, white people will speak very differently to you, Heather Ash, than they will speak to me in many instances. And it's important to be conscious and present enough to challenge some of those or to investigate or get curious. This is not about like an adversarial counter positioning all the time. And what's the line I can use to shut this person down because they're ignorant? This is, hey, how can what makes you say that? Or why are you tired right now? What has happened in your experience to make you so upset about Black lives mattering? Why is it upsetting that Black lives should matter?
Good question. Yes. Yeah.
Hmm? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I want to say that for the any of the women that are of color that are listening, we have a group in the Warrior Goddess community that's Warrior Goddess Women of Color, and they're meeting. They meet every 2 weeks, and it's just women of color that want to come together to share experiences and be held in a safe container. So that's tonight at 7 p.m. And let me go find the link for you. And then for the white women, we're working. There's been a group of us that have been doing really beautiful, deep work together as white women, of talking to each other and talking about what our next steps are. So I'm looking at how to bring that to the larger community. We've been using the Warrior Heart Practice, which is a book I read from one of the women in our our community that is a diversity coach. So that's been spectacular. So we'll bring
Wonderful.
that. Okay, so two more things. Oh my god, I could talk with you forever. So this is not quick, but we're gonna do it quick.
Okay.
This is quick, right? So,
Right. No.
and I have so much to say about this, but so, is saying something like "all lives are precious" offensive?
Well, it depends on the context. It depends on the what's the goal? Because if it's in response, is it to counter Black Lives Matter? Because my question is, if it is, why does that need to be countered? And yes, all lives are precious, and Black lives also matter. So is this a way not to say Black Lives Matter? What really is the goal in that? Would be my question. So I can't tell you whether or not that's offensive, evasive, unconscious, or microaggressive, if not macroaggressive. Yeah.
And I'll add, beautifully said. Please, please, all the white people out there, I love you. Please stop doing this. If somebody says Black Lives Matter, please don't counter All Lives Matter. Just don't, because we know that. Black people know that. They're not going Black Lives. They're not saying Black lives are better. Black lives are more important than your life. What they're saying is Black Lives Matter, and that just to respect. We all know we're equal. There's no illusion about that.
Well,
That's true. Yeah, spiritually.
that's I hope we know that.
I know.
Yeah.
It's so true. Yeah.
I
We do.
hope we know that.
I want everyone to know that.
Right, right.
Yeah, but in the spiritual realm, that's what people are doing.
That's what I'm saying, the bypassing.
The bypassing.
Using that meditation cushion to just float off somewhere else and to not bring it back into the thick of it. That's what the spiritual practice is. And I know I'm not in the warrior goddess community officially, but I know that's the work of the warrior goddess community too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stripping away all of the artifice. I'm not in the warrior goddess community yet. I'll say that.
For sure. You're part of the community. Yeah.
There, I'm in. Yes.
You're in. All right, one more share, which is similar to what we've been talking about. Deb, I feel we are being programmed to believe that there's an enormous separation between us, way more than what is real to me. I was brought up to appreciate and respect all people in all forms. I was not raised with divides or bridges. I'm saddened to realize that this disparity exists. I'm hopeful that with conscious conversations like this one, we can touch each other in ways that go beyond skin and color, and instead connect through our hearts where all possibilities exist.
Thank you for that. Yes. And again, lean in. This is about like the small movements toward living into the truth that we really want to embody. We don't have to go out and make all the big major statements and all that, because it's not sustainable. Like, what we can do in a moment to moment basis is to just keep breathing and checking in, like what's true, what's real right now, what is coming up, what is the challenge, and just lean toward that and keep leaning. And not to let things go, but to be curious about, hey, why am I saying that? Why do I believe that thing? Why is my family saying this particular thing. And, and so examining it, being that person that you came here to be, and really embodying that the truth of our connection. It's a life's work.
So true. Mm. I so appreciate you and the beauty that you radiate from your heart and the stillness I feel in you and the capacity you have to hold the complexity. So thank you for all of that. And may anybody who's watching today take that in.
Heather Ash Amara, thank you so very much. Deep, deep bow to you for all of the work that you do to be a bridge and a connector and to just really help us live fully alive and on purpose. I so appreciate you allowing me this time to be in community with the community and for trusting me just to to everybody. So and thank you all for showing up as well too. It's just been a beautiful time together.
Yes, yes, so agree. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone that joined. Kriste, thank you again. And I know we'll be having many more conversations. So
Yes, we will.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
All
Well,
my
thanks everyone.
love. Bye.